Hello, this is Steve Hart. This presentation is intended for clergy jail visitors and people considering taking on this important work. It's a reference document as much as a one-time presentation, which is why there's so much text. What's the mission of the Clergy Jail Visiting Project? First and foremost, it's to protect the human rights and enhance the well-being of people inside. If jail staff, jail management know that their eyes on what's happening, they'll do better on both of those fronts. Second, the project intends to give people inside a voice in public debate about how the jail should operate. They have experiences, ideas, complaints that are justified, all of which should enter into thinking about how the jails work, but don't right now. Third, we want to educate the community. Let citizens in our county know what is being done in their name and using their tax dollars. And finally, the project intends to provide some pastoral presence inside. I'll talk about how this works later on. It's helpful to be aware of some of the differences between county jails and state prisons. New York State prisons all operate under a single agency. It's a central bureaucracy, although often disorganized and inconsistent. Jails, by contrast, are in each county, and in each county's jail is an autonomous empire, almost always run by an elected sheriff. Another difference is who is in them. Prisons hold people serving multi-year sentences for felonies. In jails, about 3/4 of the people are awaiting trial, and so they're legally innocent, although not treated that way. And most of the rest are serving short sentences for minor crimes, shoplifting, that kind of thing. The scale is very different, but you can think about it two ways. The population on any given day in prisons is twice as much as jails, about 33,000 versus about 17,000 for all jails combined. But because people stay in jails for shorter times, the impact is in an important way much greater for jails, whereas prisons are experienced by about 40,000 people in any given year. That accounts for some people coming in and some people coming out. Jails have more than 200,000 people every year that are booked in and spend some amount of time there. That's 5 times as many, and it's over 1% of everybody, man, woman, and child, who lives in New York State. This is a massive impact on the lives of our fellow citizens. And finally, prisons have considerably more oversight than jails do, although it's still weak in prisons. Jails have really almost no effective oversight. There is a regulatory agency, the State Commission of Correction, that is supposed to watch over what they do and force them to do better. But it releases extraordinarily little information to the public, and it does essentially nothing to force the jails to improve their human rights record or the well-being of the people inside. In short, the need for oversight in jails is great, but it isn't happening. So what can be done? Well, as it happens, clergy have a special opportunity to do oversight that nobody else is doing. New York State has, in its correction law, has a provision called Section 500J about who may visit local correction facilities and visit isn't quite what you might think it means from the usual connotations of the term. Here is the complete text of section 500J. I don't expect you to read it right now, but you might want to go back to it later on. And now I'm going to, in the next couple of slides, I'm going to go over some of the key points in it. 500J starts with a list of people who are given the right to visit at pleasure county jails. The list includes the governor, state legislators, and then eventually clergy. There's no distinction made grammatically or through punctuation or anything between clergy and these public officials. The intention when we're talking about the governor or state legislators has to be that these are not just visits to help out individuals, be companions to them, so forth, any of the kinds of things that could happen in pastoral visits, but to do inspections, monitoring of the jails for public policy purposes. And so clergy have that same right. At pleasure doesn't just mean anytime you want without having to give advance notice. The more important part of it is that it means that the jail doesn't have to agree to the visit, that it's a right of the people that are listed here. One other point I want to make right now is that it talks about the rooms in which jail residents are confined. That means housing areas. In other words, this provision gives a right to go into the bowels of the jails, not just to be in sort of semi-external, non-secure areas like a visiting room. However, not all clergy have this privilege. Only ones, quote, having charge of congregations in the county. What is a congregation? New York state law defines it as being any association, whether incorporated or not, that meets regularly for worship or religious observances. So it's very broad, very open-ended. Then who is the clergy member in charge? Well, the law, Religious Corporations Law of the state, talks about three different things. One is being authorized by a denomination or authority above the congregation, like a Catholic bishop. The second idea is being formally called by the congregation to be their clerical leader. And the third is simply being the person that members of the congregation look to for direction and guidance in spiritual affairs. So again, as with congregation, there's considerable flexibility in how one could define having charge of a congregation. The only thing I want to talk about in this slide is how you show that you are a clergy member in charge of a congregation in the county. Point number 4. The most frequent way that we've done this in the past is to send the sheriff's office a URL to a website or Facebook page for the congregation. And usually it's very clear that this is a congregation that worships. You can see its address, you can see that it's in the county. And usually the clergy member who intends to visit is shown as its senior pastor or its only pastor or its rabbi or with some other title that makes it clear that this clergy member is in charge. Let me emphasize the difference between 500J visits and standard pastoral visits. Whereas a pastoral visit is to address the spiritual and practical needs of a particular individual known in advance of the visit typically. In the 500J visits, we're collecting information to help advance the human rights and the well-being of everyone inside, now, and in the future. The location of a 500J visit is housing areas, whereas for pastoral visits, it's usually in special pastoral visiting rooms. The person it's with in a pastoral visit is normally pre-selected, pre-known, whereas in 500J visits, it's anybody in a housing area who's willing to be interviewed. And finally, the right to do pastoral visits is sheriff controlled. You typically have to be on an approved list and be vetted, whereas your right to do 500J visits is defined by law and depends only upon your meeting the qualifications that we've just been talking about. There is no discretion for the sheriff to disapprove of you and not admit you. The governor or state legislator can simply show up at the door of a jail and be admitted. Not so with clergy. The people at the door need to know that you really are a clergy member in charge of a congregation in the county. And furthermore, they probably have never heard of Section 500J and need to consult with higher-ups as to the scope of it and how to implement it. So you have to deal with the jail management. And this has to be done independently in each county. In Erie County, we had to sue the sheriff. We were lucky in that we were then able to get a negotiated agreement rather than having to take our chances with a judge. We did make a couple of compromises. We agreed to give 48-hour notice and to be out of secure areas of the jail during lockdowns. But we got some important things. We got the right to privacy for conversations and for our notes. We got the right to go to any housing area. And above all, we didn't have the months or years and risks of actual court litigation. What do visits under the agreement look like? A team of 3 to 4 qualified clergy go in for 3 to 4 hours. The clergy take an interview instrument, which is mostly structured, allowing quantified conclusions, but has some free-form comments. That provides richness, stories, and is also how we learn of issues that aren't in our structured questions. The visits are sometimes to the holding center downtown, other times to the correctional facility in Alden. And in each visit, the clergy go into various areas of the jail, interviewing residents and recording their observations of what they see and hear in that housing area. How do you prepare for a visit? Once the date and time are set, you provide the project coordinator with information that she's going to send to the jail when announcing the visit. A scan of your driver's license or other ID, your name, your title, the congregation you're at, and evidence of qualification. We also ask that you become familiar with the interview instrument so that you can use it fluently while you're inside. And the team leader has special responsibilities to go over plans for the upcoming visit with the project coordinator. What to bring and where is a little tricky. You should feel free to wear either clerical or street clothes, whatever you feel more comfortable in. There are possible pros and cons to either. You need to keep metal to a minimum. No jewelry, no wires and bras, no metal in or on your shoes, or at least a minimum of it. Avoid heavy metal belt buckles. Anything like that can cause problems going through the metal detector. You also have to be well covered and wear nothing alluring. There's an incredible sexism about some of these standards. You definitely have to bring your ID, the same one you sent a scan of to the coordinator, and this is really important, medical documentation for any big pieces of metal that are in your body. Things like knee implants, probably hip implants, artificial shoulders, anything of that kind. It isn't a problem with hearing aids, eyeglasses, dental implants, but the big things are a problem. I've been refused by a jail because of not having documentation of my knee implants. It's bizarre. There's no way that my knee implant could become a weapon during my visit. But they insist on it. It doesn't have to be a card specifically or in a particular format, just some kind of thing from your doctor's office, the surgeon's office that put the metal into you, describing what they put in, which limb, which side, so forth. You can bring a writing implement of your choice. The coordinator will have ones, but you may have one you like better. I'd also advise bringing a dumb watch, something with no Wi-Fi, cell, Bluetooth, any kind of connectivity to the outside world. If the weather is bad or it's winter, whatever, the jail has lockers where outerwear can go, also keys, phones, ID, which they don't want you to have with you when you go inside. If you might have to take medications while you're doing the visit, bring them in their prescription bottles, and the jail staff will store them and bring them to you on request. On the day of the visit, you'll meet the project coordinator about 15 minutes in advance near the jail. You'll get the forms and project business cards. It's a time to ask final questions and probably to pray together, center before going in. Then you go in, you go through security, and you do the visit. The team leader will select the housing areas and will deal with any problems that arise. At the end, you'll meet the coordinator who will take all of your forms and notes. And if possible, the whole team will then go to a nearby location figured out by the coordinator for a short, maybe 30-minute debriefing, possibly over lunch. The next few slides are about guidelines for what we do and we don't do inside. The most basic principle is to use your own good judgment. You've experienced plenty of fraught situations, and in most cases, you'll automatically know what to do. But there's some things you might not realize. One key thing is not to take anything from an incarcerated person, not even like a slip of paper with a phone number on it, and not to give anything to an incarcerated person other than the organizational business card. It's also a bad idea to agree to be an intermediary to anyone on the outside, family members, lawyer, etc. All of these things that I'm saying no to are things that might seem humane, but that can have bad consequences. Like if you phone somebody that supposedly is the mother of the incarcerated person, it might instead be a collaborator in drug deals. And the police could then even accuse you of being a participant in drug crimes. We really don't want to take a risk like that. We also suggest avoiding getting involved in helping an incarcerated person get some kind of complaint or problem resolved with jail management. But in exceptional situations where the need is really urgent, you might do it. Another guideline is to avoid arguing with staff about policies and practices, about values. They may not see things the way we do, and our goal isn't to influence their thinking. But it is okay to ask them what policies and practices are if that isn't clear to you, if there's some ambiguity based upon what the people inside tell you. And if you're careful and gentle about it, even to ask them the reason for the practices and policies. In the agreement we made with the jail, we promised no proselytization. But it's fine to answer questions and express your views on religious and other topics. I would suggest not proactively starting prayer, but if somebody inside asks you to pray with them, that's just fine. Many people in jail are troubled, or their lives are in chaos, and they may ask for what is in essence pastoral care, helping them work through some of the issues and problems in their life. And it's perfectly fine to do some of that. It's just that we can't let that take over all of our time. But if you're feeling unhappy that you can't do more of it, think about the fact that your very presence and the fact that you listen carefully and respectfully to what people are saying is a pastoral act in itself. Staff and officers in jails mostly pay little attention to what people inside say, and often just disregard the things that they say. Just don't take them in. That's a dehumanizing experience. And what you're doing is the direct opposite, providing a humanizing experience that is rare in jail. That's an important pastoral act in itself. And it also is the case that we are not neutral, and we don't have to pretend to be neutral. We're there for incarcerated people, not to get them goodies necessarily, but for everybody who's inside and who will be inside, to help make their conditions better. And that's not being neutral, but is completely consistent with being careful about being factual and collecting accurate data with some precision, which are things we need to do. You'll surely have observations, impressions, recollections of things that people told you that aren't on paper. And those will fade from memory pretty fast. So please try to get them down in some way or other, possibly by dictating them into the recorder app on your phone and sending that to the coordinator, or in some other way that works better for you. With regard to the paper stuff, the recorder will scan your forms and notes. She'll create a PDF file and send that to you within 24 hours of the visit. If there's anything she can't puzzle out on your forms, she'll include some queries. Please respond to those within another 48 hours. So this is the end of the presentation. The last thing I want to say is thank you Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your participation in this holy work. Without you as clergy visitors, none of this would be possible. And so please accept our thanks, and also feel free to be in touch with either Kristen or me whenever it would help in the work you're doing for us and for God's kingdom on earth. Thank you.